This photo story will include a title page for my lesson, a table of contents that you're looking at now, pages including guiding questions for the lesson, examples of a filled in and blank U.S. rivers map, West Virginia CSOs that are used in this lesson, the 21st century skills standards, as well as ISTE standards that I've utilized for this presentation. Some general teaching objectives that I hope to bring across to the students with this lesson, and then student activities and expectations that I would have for them. As mentioned on the previous slide, this is an example of the U.S. rivers map, or significant rivers of the United States, that I would provide to the students as a guide when we first present the lesson. This is a blank U.S. map. After giving my students the filled-in version, I could reasonably expect them to look at the version and then transfer over or trace over the paths of the rivers onto this blank map as part of their grade for the assignment. Some guiding questions that I had set out with this lesson were: what are the major rivers of the U.S.? How do we use our rivers and streams? And then, as sort of an upper level question to require them to do some outside thinking, I would ask, how would our economy and nation be different today had our ancestors not harnessed rivers for our purposes? These are a list of the West Virginia content standards that I utilized for this lesson. You will notice that these are 7th grade standards, as typically I think this kind of lesson will be done in a general geography class for 7th graders. This is one of the 21st century skills standards that I set forth or listed for this lesson. A student sets challenging goals and strategically plans to reach those goals, monitors performance and adjusts effort and strategies, seeks assistance when needed, and demonstrates focused commitment to reaching the established goals. Now, there are others that could have been used for this as well. The students, as part of the lesson, will have to do some outside research to explain to me rivers that they have selected, 3 of them to be exact, what the primary purposes or uses that we have for those major rivers are. So this would be a good application of this standard, as they'll have to manage their time and also determine through self-study what they'll need to bring to present to the class. As part of this lesson, I've included an online rivers quiz game that the students will utilize in class if I am lucky enough to have computers in my classroom. I know the 8th grade West Virginia history class that I'm currently evaluating, they have a bank of computers, 7 or 8, that they use on a regular basis that are connected online and can be used for such online games for educational purposes. These are expectations that I've set out for myself in this lesson. I hope to identify and lecture on major U.S. waterways using maps, board notes, the textbook, and other media such as online geography games. I want to list and define key terms on the board, of which the students will then transfer over into their notebooks to be used later for the assessment following this activity. I want to provide a blank U.S. map with major rivers marked for students to label and hand in. I want to explain various uses for our major waterways and discuss how their use has had an effect on our country's development. Also, I'll express expectations of assignments that follow this lecture or lesson. And then lastly, I want to answer and discuss students' questions pertaining to the lesson and the assignments. These next few slides briefly will show a demonstration of the online geography game that I found that can be used for river identification. As you know, click here to play the game. This game that I found is by Shepherd Software, and it is actually a U.S. rivers game and quiz. The game will begin each session with saying something like, locate and click on the Ohio River. And at that point you mouse over the Ohio River and its location on the map. And if you choose the correct river, as I have here, being that I'm a geography minor and a future social studies teacher, I hope I could recognize the Ohio River on a map. I'd also hope that our 7th graders or even 8th graders in the West Virginia history course could locate that as well, as it's local. It told me that I was correct, if you can see that from the image. Then it would ask you to click OK, and it'll ask for another river, such as it may say next to locate the Mississippi, and the process will begin all over again. This is a list of expectations that I have of the students following the lesson, or some of this could be done as classwork. I want them to record board notes and other discussed items from the lesson in their course notebooks. Obviously, they'll need to record and learn the key terms and their definitions for the later assessment to follow. I'm going to expect them in this lesson to identify 3 major U.S. waterways and label them on the map that I've provided. I'm going to perform, or have them rather, perform independent research on each waterway selected and determine its primary use. I mainly want them to explain to me, is it used for tourism, such as the New River in West Virginia is mainly used for whitewater rafting, or the Ohio is used for barge traffic for coal and other manufacturing goods, that sort of thing. I'm going to ask them to compose a paragraph explaining to me which of the 3 rivers that they've chosen has had the most impact on U.S. history and why. And then lastly, for a purpose of independent study, I'm going to ask them to prepare a discussion to be had during the next class session on how our country's advancement would have been impacted had our ancestors not harnessed rivers for our purposes. I had a history professor that loved counterfactuals, like, what would have happened in the U.S. had the South won the war instead of the North, that sort of thing. And I think that it's a really fun activity, and I think mainly junior high kids or high school kids could easily get a grasp on it and provide something acceptable for class. And as this slide says, the end. You've reached the end of my PhotoStory presentation on my U.S. Waterways lesson plan. I hope it hasn't been too painful. Maybe you've enjoyed it, and perhaps you found it a little bit informative. This is Fred Gerwig. I'll talk to you later. Hi, I'm Fred Gerwig, and this is my U.S. Waterways lesson, which has been used for PowerPoint and Windows Movie Maker, and now PhotoStory 3 for the Education 6305 class at Fairmont State University.